Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's first of four conservation planning webinar series. Before we begin today's webinar, I would like to take this time to thank our co-sponsors for this event, the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center and Diné Inc., for allowing the New Mexico NAPS 6 project to provide this opportunity for our producers to get a better idea of what is required and a guideline to follow while completing their conservation plans to better improve their current operations. The New Mexico NAPS Native American, the New Mexico Native American Producers Success Project, or New Mexico NAPS 6 project in short, is a collaborative effort between Diné Inc., a nonprofit organization, the New Mexico Cooperative Extension Services, and Diné College Land Grant Office. So we have currently two projects operating in both New Mexico and Arizona. The New Mexico NAPS 6 field staff consists of myself, Jesse Jim, and Jana Johnson. The Arizona NAPS 7 team field staff are Sadie Lister and Sharon Sandman. The project is funded by USDA's Office of Partnership and Public Engagement and the Outreach and Assistance for Socially Disadvantaged and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers program. So the overall goal of the NAPS project is to increase the profitability and long-term sustainability of Navajo farmers and ranchers. To help us achieve this goal, there are some activities that we are currently providing in four key areas, which are to improve Navajo farm and ranch operations, increasing our Navajo farmers and ranchers' knowledge of and access to available programs and technical assistance provided by USDA, BIA, Navajo Nation, New Mexico Cooperative Extension Services, Diné College, Land Grant Office, and other professionals. We are also strengthening the organizational capacity of the Navajo Farmer and Rancher Congress to address the current and future needs of Navajo farmer and ranchers, and then also facilitating Navajo farmer and ranchers' use of USDA programs such as NRCS, FSA, and RMA programs. So we had originally planned for the conservation planning workshop to take place back in March of this year at Ninetnezaw chapter. Around that time, as many of you know, COVID-19 had reached the Navajo Nation, forcing us to cancel our conservation planning workshop. So we were hoping to reschedule in May, but it was pushed. So we had to improvise and think of ways to deliver much needed workshops. So based off our recent Natural Resource Fair webinar series attendance and format last month, we decided to host a 4-part, 1-hour conservation planning webinar series to further assist our Navajo farmers and ranchers conservation plans efforts. So as many of you know, we have experienced years and years of drought and overgrazing, threatening the sustainability of regions, the agro ecosystem, and the future of Navajo farm and ranch operations. So there's enough threat to cause a huge concern for the Navajo Nation, along with BIA, to implement mandated grazing management and conservation planning and practices on the Navajo Nation. So since the implementation of the mandated conservation planning, there have been some studies that have shown that the Navajo ranchers and farmers lack access to information, technical assistance, and government programs, creating a major barrier to improving the profitability and sustainability of Navajo farm and ranch operations. So based on these results, we are providing these conservation planning webinar series every Wednesday in August to assist our farmers and ranchers complete their plans. After these webinar series are complete, starting in September, we would like to work one-on-one with those that are interested in completing their conservation plan. So before I turn the screen over to Benita, I would like to turn the mic over to my colleague, Michael Patrick, to share a few words with you all today. Michael?
Thank you, Jesse. Yes, this is Michael Patrick with New Mexico Cooperative Extension Service, and we're really proud and pleased that Benita can join us today to share with us the work that she and her colleagues are doing at the land grant office at Diné College. They're in the forefront, Diné College is in the forefront of finding opportunities and solutions to problems to assist their ranchers and farmers, and Benita is providing leadership in the conservation planning effort, and we're really pleased to have her today. And thank you, Benita, for finding time to join us, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. And please invite your family members, colleagues, friends to join us next Wednesday and the following Wednesdays this month to gain from the insights you'll learn from the 3 remaining workshops we'll have. Thank you, Jesse. I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Michael. So let's go ahead and start with today's presentation on conservation planning overview provided by Diné College Land Grant Office, Benita Litson. So I'll turn the screen over to you, Benita.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm Benita Litson. I'm the director of the Land Grant Office here at Diné College. And we have been doing work in community outreach for farmers and ranchers for the past, I want to say maybe 12, 13 years or so. I've been with the college for 15 years, and it's a long time. Yes, I cannot believe it. But my time here, I've been privileged to be able to work within my own community of Taylor. So that's kind of where I am from, Taylor Wheatfields area. And I got my education at Arizona State University, received, with agribusiness, background in agribusiness and pre-veterinary science, also my master's in natural resource management. And then, like I said, privileged to be here in my own hometown community to do this type of work. So my family has been a part of the ranching industry on Navajo, and also farming. So we run 45 acres of farmland in addition to running a cow-calf operation, and now selling grass-fed beef to our local producers. We are finally getting into growing vegetable crops. So we are in our 2nd year of doing that. So it's a learning curve. So we've been doing a lot of these, it's a learning process for all of us as we all start learning to work with our land. So my clan, Shay, Senjikin, and Shle, Skachini, Bashashin, Kiani, Dashachado, Totuni, Dashanala, and that's my clan. I feel like I'm, in the area that it's a lot of work, definitely, because our program is 100% grant funded. So we're constantly looking for funding opportunities to conduct programs across the Navajo Nation. And so I think that's the hard part of creating, a program that could benefit farmers and ranchers. The good side of all of this is, it's something that really intrigues me. I'm passionate about the work. I love, working with livestock. I love working with animals. And I've learned to love teaching other ranchers and farmers. And I also love to learn from them too, because a lot of them, especially working with the elders, they have so much knowledge and information about how they have carried their livestock through centuries, passing it down from generation to generation. And I think that's one of the most important things in regards to carrying, the livestock or farming, is carrying on a legacy that has, pretty much brought our people forward for many generations. And we have been able to sustain ourselves in many ways, just based on working off of our land and being able to be productive. So with that, I guess I will start with conservation planning. First, I wasn't sure how we want to do this, since we do only have a small group of participants, is my understanding. I was thinking, I wanted to know, I don't know if you guys can put in the chat box if you guys are farmers or ranchers, so I can make sure I touch base on some of the things that you guys might already have some questions on. But as we start, Jesse kind of already touched on it a bit in regards to conservation planning on Navajo Nation is really something that becomes a requirement as you are moving your grazing permits forward or passing it on to another generation, or if you're acquiring it. Same way with the farmland projects. So you're having to go through the process of acquiring a particular permit. And if you're, asking for any types of additional funding from either USDA programs, NRCS, they also ask for a conservation plan. And so for a while there, and I think there still is, but for a while there, many people were concerned in regards to what is a conservation plan. And there was talks of 3 different types of conservation plans floating around out there. The Navajo Nation requiring one, Bureau of Indian Affairs was requesting one, and then folks that are going into USDA programs are also requesting one. So what we did at Diné College is try to consolidate all of those conservation plan templates and try to put it into one format that could be used, and you could develop it and still turn it in at BIA, turn it in at USDA NRCS, and have it on file for the Navajo Nation. So we do have templates for farmers and ranchers. There's also others very similar templates that the Navajo Nation would share with you if you're going to ask either your grazing official or your farm board. They should have a template in place also, but it's very, very similar to what we have established. The thing I think we're different is we're concentrating on some of the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Services languages into your conservation plan, because once you start working on your land, you start developing some improvements or wanting to start developing, you want to have some funding to help support that initiative. And NRCS actually has many programs that could assist you as a farmer or rancher in that regards. So we want to make sure that you develop a template or a document that could fit all of these 3 different agencies, like I said, Navajo Nation, BIA, and USDA. So with that, we'll move to the next slide, which I should actually start my slideshow. So some of the benefits to a conservation plan basically is like I said earlier, is transferring of permits. It's definitely required for both land use and grazing. It also, I want to say, it saves you money long term, because when you're working on the land right now today, you're putting a lot of work into it. You're buying fencing supplies, you're buying either your seeds, you're buying diesel fuel for your tractor, those type of things. That's a lot of money that you're investing into what you're putting onto your ranch. So, but longer term, if you take care of your fence lines, if you take care of your land, your soils, you're going to get a better return off of what you're putting into it, rather than kind of letting it sway aside and hoping that it's not productive this year, next year, the next few years, you're not producing a crop off of it. You're actually losing, if you're thinking about selling hay, selling your crops, you're actually losing some of that potential income. So there's a lot of, with anything, if you plan, you're actually putting an effort into trying to sustain that longer term so that it's going to be able to become an investment for you, a return on that investment. And then it also ensures that you improve natural resources. So that means stuff like water. We don't have a lot of rainfall these days. So what are you doing for your livestock in regards to planning how water is delivered throughout the rangelands? How is your irrigation system? Many of you are probably dryland farmers, so you're relying on the monsoon rains. How are you collecting as much as you can and being able to use that? So being able to plan in that capacity. Additionally, there's I always say we say increase property value. For us, on Diné, we're always being told it's not your land, it's not yours. So, and I feel like that's probably why a lot of people don't really care about. We start tending to overgraze our lands. We tend to not care for it as if it was ours. And then there's few of us that were really pushed to say that, don't listen to that. It's not your land, whatever you live on, whatever you're trying to make a living on, you want to improve that. You want to be able to ensure that your livestock has enough forage, enough water on the rangelands. So you're going to invest into that. So you're increasing, longer term, you would be increasing property value if that was your own, but like I said, whatever you're investing into your farmland, your rangeland, I feel like you're going to get your returns long term. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And so that's where, having a plan and being able to make decisions kind of based off of your plan helps you to get through these hard times. Sometimes it's difficult to say that we're going to sell, half of our herd because we don't have enough rain. We can't haul enough water anymore, that type of stuff. But, if you have that plan in place and your bottom line is your rangeland, and the health of your livestock, then you're going to have to make those sacrifices. But it really helps to establish your plan and what's your underlying goal. What's the reason for that? It enhances, other habitats for wildlife, for other, for the animals that are utilizing the same rangelands, because it's not just your livestock that is utilizing it. We see many different wildlife, reptiles, different, species that are utilizing the same land base. We also improve the health of our livestock, whether it's sheep, cattle, horses. But if you have good rangeland conditions, your animals are going to be looking healthy, looking decent. And so that's kind of what we thrive for, as a farmer or a rancher, is that you want quality product. You want a quality product. You want to be able to possibly sell that product. As a consumer, you start thinking, what would I want to purchase? What type of crop would I want to purchase? What type of vegetable? How it looks. What type of what does my meat look like? On the grocery store. Those, you start to think of the quality as you become, a farmer or a rancher. It also prevents off-site impacts and environmental regulations. I always share this story. For us, we're on Navajo and it's almost dusty all the time and you don't know. But when I was in grad school, I took my horse down to Phoenix with me, and there's an arena down the road and I would ride in the arena. And one day I guess I was creating so much dust that the cops came. And they were asking me to stop riding my horse, and I was trying to think, why? I don't understand why. But they really monitor air quality, and so I was disrupting air quality. And so unless I was watering down that arena or the soil, I wasn't to ride my horse in that area. So if we had that type of strict, guidelines, it would be really, really hard for us to do a lot of work on Navajo, but I'm pretty sure it's coming. But those are things, there's a lot of environmental regulations that I feel like we're not used to hearing about or seeing. And so there's definitely a lot more education that needs to happen. The other, I keep talking about it, is plant health and vigor, making sure we have diversity on our rangelands so that, there's food on the ground that's palatable for our livestock. And then there's also forage on the ground that holds that soil down and be able to still, put some healthy nutrients back into that soil. So that's definitely important. Making your land look more attractive, you drive through anywhere, you can see lots of overgrazed land, and then you see some land that are well taken care of, and you can see it, if you really drive down the road and you start looking along the fence lines, you start to see those patterns. And then, just thinking about your family promotes definitely healthy and a safe, it's pretty much you're taking care of your family. I feel like, with me, I ranch with my kids. My husband's away at work, and so it's just me and my boys, and we're out there, early in the morning and coming back late in the evenings. But I feel like it teaches your children a good work ethic, learn how to work safe around animals. And that takes, you a long ways, because as you go into the workforce or any type of career path, all of these training that you develop on your farm or ranch, common sense things, it helps you to be, savvy in your career. It also allows you to be eligible for several different programs. And I've mentioned USDA has quite a bit of programs that are available to us, but we also have to prove that, we are going to use that funding into its capacity and be able to do it in certain ways. And that's where this conservation planning comes into place. Okay, so basically, this just talks about why USDA NRCS sort of exists throughout tribal lands. But it first established back in 1929 when the Dust Bowl era was happening. The government started thinking about, what's going on? Why is our soils being depleted? What do we need to do? We need to start educating our farmers to be able to, sustain the soil health. And so therefore they created, at the time, was soil erosion services. And then in 1935, soil conservation services. And now they're called NRCS. So sometimes you hear your parents or your grandparents talk about SES or SCS, and you're kind of thinking, I think they mean NRCS. So they're still stuck with the old names of NRCS. And then in the 40s, there was a transition between U.S. Department of Interior, and that's where the soil erosion services was under the Department of Interior. And the establishment of USDA separating from the Department of Interior happened in the 40s. So that's when NRCS fell under USDA programming. Then in 1977, that's when it became a part of several, in several Indian communities. And those are known as developing those conservation districts, or soil conservation districts is what they're called. So on Navajo, we actually have a few of them. And so that's when it was developed. And then in the 70s, right around that same time, policies of the BIA to cooperate closely with the soil conservation districts. More so because, our lands are held in trust. And so we still have to have approval and authority from BIA to be able to conduct programs and projects on throughout our tribal lands. So our next slide for Navajo Nation or NRCS. First, there's a farm bill that's established, I believe every 8 years. And so they've been delaying it for several years before the, I think, 2004 farm bill was established. That mandates funding and appropriates funds throughout all the states across the nation. From there, each state has its own USDA programs. So if you're in New Mexico, you're going to go to your state office. If you're in Arizona, you're going to go visit your state office. Underneath the states, we start seeing what we call district conservationists, and their NRCS staff. And I believe in New Mexico, there's one in Aztec, one in Gallup. There's one in Shiprock, which for some reason, I'm not sure what happened, but Shiprock is considered under Arizona, the state of Arizona. And then you have your soil and water conservation districts. And so on Navajo, we have 5 districts. And that was established in the 80s. And like I said, in the 70s, that's when we started seeing the presence of NRCS programming on tribal lands. So for Navajo, that was established in the 80s. So these are the 5 soil and water conservation districts that we have on Navajo. We have Little Colorado River, Navajo Mountain, Chinle, San Juan, and Fort Defiance. And so those are the conservation districts that we do have. So it would be good wherever you're from, find out what your SWCD is and who they are, because the important part of SWCDs are there are grassroots level, I don't want to say authorizers, but they're the ones that should be advocating for us farmers and ranchers in our area. And so I used to sit on the SWCD for my chapter, and we were a part of the Chinle SWCD. And one year we have to do they do these state technical meetings. And so they're asking us to develop these ranking system on the ground. I did that with our chapter. And if you guys have ever been through Say-Leaf wheat fields, we have 3 perennial streams. We have 2 lakes. We have more water than all the other chapters around us. And so that year, none of the folks from the soil and water conservation districts on Navajo submitted anything to the state office to be able to help Navajo people be ranked in this ranking system. And since I did mine, I sent mine into the state office, and that was utilized for the whole Navajo Nation. Can you believe that? So Say-Leaf wheat feels little, small. Yes, we have water, we have this. It's still not enough, but we do have water. But it wasn't a representation of the entire Navajo Nation. And that's why I say this SWCDs are very, very important to being able to take advantage of these NRCS programs, because those programs are based on a ranking system. And so if we're not at the table at the state level negotiating to say that our people qualify for these programs, it's really hard for our people to be able to rank our application as high as the non-natives. So just thinking about that, learn about SWCDs in your chapter or your community. Find out if you have a representative. If there's not, try to push someone to advocate for you all in your area. There is a lot of opportunities that are available in regards to having an SWCD, and I think that it really helps your community to be able to start thinking about longer term issues. Like for us, we have a lot of windmills that are down. We don't have water for our livestock on our rangeland. So what can we do? How can we become an advocate for other farmers and ranchers to say that this is a concern and we definitely have to do something about it? So that's where we can be able to push this through the SWCDs. Jesse also mentioned the Navajo Farmer and Rancher Congress, and that was developed exactly for that, is to have a unified voice to say that these are the concerns of our people, and trying to take that up to the nation, council level, so that we become advocates for farmers and ranchers across Navajo. But SWCD, soil water conservation districts, are definitely something you guys want to look into, where you all are from. So I talked a little bit about this ranking system. So as I mentioned, we have those 5 SWCDs on Navajo. Fortunately, I know we had 14 members. And so each community, we're supposed to develop and gather resource concerns around, air quality, water quality, amounts of water, soil, lots of different types of concerns. And we create a ranking system, and that what we create is what we send to the state office. And so that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that once we establish that, we should be coming back together with all the SWCDs across Navajo and coming up with a ranking system that benefits all of us, rather than one community submitting on behalf of Navajo. So that's just something I wanted to share with you all. So we'll move into natural resource conservation planning. So NRCS indicates that there's 3 phases in their 9-step process. So phase 1 is a collection and analysis, understanding the problem and opportunities. So your first one is identifying that problem within your farmland, rangeland, or whatever you're working on. Take this time to think about, what are my problems? I'm not sure where you guys are all from and what your farming community might look like, but think about that. Like I said, for me, although we're in Saley wheat fields, our rangeland is fenced off, and we're pretty happy about that. We're part of an RMU, my family, but within the RMU we have 3 windmills, and out of the 3 windmills, only 1 is operable. So we have that's a potential problem for us. The other is, people coming in and cutting the fence when they're gathering wood, or illegal dumping. So you're having to ride the fence line to maintain the fence. The other things are when it's hunting season and it's muddy, people go 4-wheeling through there, and you start seeing a lot of erosion happening on the roads. They drive all over the place. They don't stay on the roads. So those type of things are problems. So for you start thinking about, what is my situation and what are the problems that I have now, and then on the other hand, what are the opportunities? So like I said, an opportunity for us is being able to utilize that rangeland and improve it, because it's a vast area. We can definitely improve upon what we have right now. Step 2 is determine your objectives. What am I going to do to start working toward fixing those problems, or getting toward those opportunities? Step 3 are your inventory resources. In this case, you're going to start documenting what you have on site. Like I said, if we have 3 windmills, I'm going to put that on there. If I have 3 ponds, I'm going to put that on there. If I have a perennial stream running through the rangeland, you might be in an open range area, but you might have a lake or a shared dam or pond, that you're going to indicate those as your resources. Do you have corrals? Do you have fencing? those type of things. What are the resources that you do have? Do you have forestry? If you're into trees, cutting wood, that type of stuff, that could be a resource for you. And then what other things are available, not just on the land, but what other programs might be available to assist you in regards to addressing some of those issues. If you have a invasive species problem, BIA usually, they have the certified folks that can spray, use the herbicide, they can help you in that capacity. And then 4 is to analyze your resource to date, and then all the data that you have collected throughout that whole time. So when you're going through this, you want to really think about what's really feasible. Yes, water is very, very important, but what are the steps that I need to take to say that I'm going to be able to, get water in the next 3 to 5 years. And then you have phase 2, which is decisions and support. So you have formulating your alternatives, just like I said, if water is a huge deal, but and sometimes it's going to take money to help create, make that happen. So what are some alternatives that you have to create if you can't fix the windmill? Are you going to have to haul water in? Where are you going to place your water hole? How are you going to diversify animals utilizing the rangelands? Are there other alternative programs that you can, that can help assist in that area? Then evaluate your alternatives. Is it worth doing this? If you're doing it to make money, are you going to continue to haul water from 40 miles and bring that in every day, and you're only going to get maybe, I don't know how many cattle you guys might run, but if you're only running 10, you start thinking of those alternatives in regards to, is it something that you're willing to continue to put an effort to? And then make those decisions. Some of it's going to be hard, like resting your rangeland is definitely hard. If you're going to take your livestock off of your rangeland and you're going to say 3 years, you're either going to find a place to take your animals, lease them off Navajo, and have that rangeland rest. And sometimes that's a hard decision to make, or you're going to cull, sell off your herd and hopefully be able to buy back when your land health returns. And then your phase 3 is conducting your application and evaluation, and starting to implement your plan and evaluating the plan. This one, the BIA conservation plan, and sorry for the mix up. I think this is where maybe I put on a different background or something like that and jumped up. But in your BIA conservation plans, they're asking for history. So how long have you been utilizing the rangeland or the farmland? How long has it been with your family? Who, might be your great grandparents. So you want to list their names down. You want to list that history of usage. How did they utilize the land? And when did it go idle? So a lot of people have idle farmlands. When did it go idle and you're coming back in and wanting to start putting it back into production? So share some of that history. Identify your objectives. What are you going to do to make sure that you're operating your farmland or your rangeland in that capacity? Create that range description. Right now I'm using rangeland as a part of the example, but it's going to be the same way for your farmland. So where's your farmland located? What does the soils look like? What kind of vegetation's on the outside of the, of your farmland? Same with on the rangeland side. What kind of vegetation do you have on the ground? What kind of are you in a shrubland? Do you have some mesas, valleys, spillways, washes? You want to start describing some of those. your livestock management plan, making sure that you're keeping record when you're going to round up, when you're going to establish your livestock tally counts. What kind of breed are you going to, start putting together? What are your production goals? Are you planning to get a calf off of every one of them, or what are you utilizing your herd for? Your range conservation plan, develop a grazing method and control, plan conservation practices, drought management plan, grazing monitoring plan. So you're going to have to answer a lot of these within your conservation plan. So your grazing method and control could be like, say a group of you guys want to develop a range management unit. You're going to have to go through BIA's application process to create that range management unit. And so, like I said, it would be a group of you all. So how are you going to rotate your cattle through that RMU when you guys establish that? If you're an open range, how are you moving cattle around so that they're grazing areas that have, forage and maybe resting a section? How are you planning with your neighbors? And I know that's a tough one for sure. Planning with your neighbors and being able to share that same consensus about how you're going to utilize the rangeland. And then what conservation practices are you putting in place? Things like erosion control, rock brush structures. You're going to, from your windmill, you want to add in water lines that can distribute your water troughs throughout the rangeland so that your animals are not grazing in one area for long term. You're moving cattle around, utilizing your water. I always share the story of Talani Lake, a community. They don't, how we have, for many of us, we have water masters for our irrigation programs where they turn on the water so we can irrigate. For Talani Lake, they created a water master it's open range, and they developed water lines throughout the community. And what they do is have a water master that turns on water throughout the rangeland. And so the cattle follow the water wherever they turn on the water and move the livestock around the rangeland using, that watering method. So, that's something that's unique. It's different. So if many of our communities could really plan like that, we would be able to, rotate and rest the land and be able to work together. I think they're in an area that they use the roadways between Loop and Flagstaff, and then they use the road between Hopi and Loop, and then they have the Hopi boundary. And so they're able to kind of manipulate that rangeland utilizing this type of using water to move livestock around. Drought management plan. This summer we didn't get a lot of rain. So what are we doing to, I guess, minimize the disturbance on the rangeland or even farmland? So if you don't have enough water to irrigate with, what are you doing? You still want to be able to, have healthy soils. So you want to put in maybe a cover crop, a drought resistant cover crop, a crop that would grow in minimal water usage just to hold down the soil, still add nutrients to your soil. You might not be able to grow your corn this year because it does require a lot of water. So, making those plans and adjustments. Creating your grazing monitoring plan. That's basically doing your vegetation analysis throughout your rangeland to say that you still have enough forage on the ground to feed your livestock for this many days. If not, then we're going to move the cattle to another paddock or another grazing area, and you're moving your livestock around, giving your land, a section of your land, rest time. Then you have your natural resource plan. So we have wildlife, woodlands, and some of us have special use permits. Many, I don't know if it is on the other side of the Chusca Mountains on New Mexico side, But we have, on our side, we have a summer and winter grazing permits. So that would be considered special, special use. So we have permits where we run our cattle down lower in the winter months, and then we're able to push our cattle up to the chuscas during the summers. So that's, like I said, that's a special use permit. If you have RMU, that's also a different permit. What types of wildlife do you have? I remember our local conservationist, I know he's an avid hunter, and he was in our area. We have a lot of deer, and sometimes we see elk, but if it was to be, we would be raising, really good wildlife. When with Michael Patrick, New Mexico State University, we went out to New Mexico State University's farm, our ranch in Corona, and they sell elk hunts or deer hunts at, I think it's 10,000 per hunt. And so they only sell 6 of them, but that's $60,000 that goes back to NMSU Ranch. And so I always try to voice that as a part of our concern as farmers and ranchers, is that we have wildlife that comes into our farmland. We have wildlife that comes into our rangeland. They utilize the same water hole. They use, the same forage. How can we as ranchers be incentivized for, kind of helping out with wildlife, the care of the wildlife, the food? Can we be a part of getting some of those hunt leases so that we are able to, fix our windmills or put another trough and put another water line in? Those type of things. How can we become advocates for that? And so thinking alongside those lines, those are potential opportunities if we could, educate, our work with our Navajo Nation government. And then they want a summary. So just a brief paragraph of pretty much everything that we just talked about. And that's a lot. And basically it's just indicating, how well you're planning to work on the rangelands. The bottom line, like I said, always thinking about soil and your forage or your vegetation as your product. Then your cattle and livestock comes next. And then with this, they ask for agreement. So if you have more than one rancher utilizing the same area, you want to have consensus with them that you guys are going to do this together. So you would list their names under this agreement to say that we're going to, work on this conservation plan together. Then your appendix will include a work plan, a copy of your grazing permit or your land use permit, location with maps and proposed conservation plan. So it would be good to put some pictures in there of maybe erosion that's happening, or maybe you put in some rock brush structures and you're trying to mitigate some of that erosion process happening that you want to put in place. So just, sharing some of the things that you're identifying on your rangeland. Next, we go into what NRCS Conservation Services indicate as resource concerns. And I share this list, like I mentioned, in your BIA plan, you can still utilize a lot of the same language that we're going to see in the next few slides into your BIA conservation plan. That way you can kind of have one conservation plan that you can use universally with BIA and NRCS. That way you're not having to develop more than one plan. So we have soil erosion as one of our concerns. So there's various types of soil erosion. You have sheet, reel, and wind. And most of us, I think we're in the wind category. And sometimes you start seeing the sheet reel happening because we have a lot of open areas that might not have vegetation. And so when water flows, you start seeing more like a huge, I want to say like a shallow river flowing. And it's definitely wider. And then you have your concentrated flow erosion. those are the ones that create gullies or little small washes, and they definitely become bigger washes if you see like the Chinle Valley or mini farms. And I seen like last week pictures of Chaco Wash fill, looked like a river running through there. But those are, they're concentrated flow. They're all the water is going into one area, and then it starts to create this like these washes. Then you have your excessive bank erosion from streams, shorelines, and water channels. So just like I was mentioning, like if you're seeing those pictures of Chaco Wash or even Chinle, the wash in Chinle, when a huge flood happens like that, you start seeing the sides start crashing down, and it gets wider and wider. The areas in Shiprock, they're definitely seeing a lot of this. In the Hogback area, we're seeing the smaller farmlands because of that. There might be a rancher that or a farmer that had been given 10 acres of land, and the bank is eroding, falling off. So they lost like a quarter acre of their farmland because of this erosion. So that's considered like your stream or shoreline or bank erosions. Then you have soil quality and degradation. And so we have subsidence, compaction, organic matter depletion, concentrations of salts or other chemicals. And so, like I said, I think we fall in probably subsidence and compaction altogether. We love to drive and herd sheep with our four-wheeler and our vehicles. So we start, creating so many roads and start compacting our rangelands. And then, we don't have a lot of organic matter because we don't have a lot of forage on the ground. We have a lot of bare ground. Your concentrated salts or other chemicals, an example could be in your farmland, if you have an area that water kind of ponds in that area, and it takes a long time for it to evaporate. You start seeing like the white stuff on your soil is because the salts are being pulled out of your soils, and then it's drying on top of your soil. And so that's when you start seeing a lot of heavier salt content. We have excess or insufficient water. I believe we put in insufficient water. If you really look at the NRCS technical assistant ranking system, the only thing they had was excess water. And for us on Navajo, we wouldn't even be able to answer this particular question if we had excess water. So we put in insufficient. We don't have enough water. So what are the things that we have to do to help either capture water, harvest water? And so what do we do to monitor that? We might have some extreme flooding in the area near your farmlands. So you would indicate that as excess. Then your water quality degradation. So what is the quality of the water in your area, whether it's your irrigation water or your rangeland water? Just an example could be like the Gold King mine spill. That definitely devastated a lot of Navajo farmers in regards to putting sort of like tainting, saying that the crops that they're growing is not good anymore, it's contaminated, lots of this. And then we continuously hear stories about the animals having high E. coli counts. So things like that. What does our water quality look like? And same way with us, like on our farmland, we may have underground piping system, but our water comes from Wheatfields Lake. And all around Wheatfields, all you see is livestock. You see people, it's a recreation site. So there's definitely going to be a lot of contaminants. So how are we monitoring that water quality as it comes onto our farmland? So those are things that we would definitely need to take a look at in regards to food safety processes. excessive sediments. We see most of our dams across Navajo were established back in the 40s and 50s, and you start seeing it filled. It's filled up. There's a lot of sediment in there. So whenever the water comes in and it starts to hold a pond, it starts to overflow, or it starts to break your dam because you have so much sediment in there. Nobody's cleaning it out that it's actually holding the water. Next one, we have degraded plant conditions. We have a lot of this, so you guys can, if you guys are writing this down, make sure you highlight all of this stuff right here. We have a lot of undesirable plants. We see a lot of cheatgrass on our rangelands. We see, and it's not palatable to our livestock. We start to see like the Russian knapweed kind of take over a lot of our farmlands. We see like the Russian olives, and then the salt cedar come into the ponds, the dams, those areas. So you start seeing a lot of undesirable plants. We have inadequate structure or composition, just meaning that, it's plants that are there, but it's not the things that we need. It's not adding nutrients to our soil. It's not being utilized by our livestock. So it's just not the composition that we want. Excessive plant pest pressure. So some areas, just recently we walked through a farmland in Shiprock, and boy, once you step, there was so many grasshoppers. That's a concern of excessive plant pressure. We have prairie dog problems. Some of us, we have deer and elk problems within our hay fields. So those are plant pest pressures. Or we have encroaching field bindweed. That's also a pest. We have, like I said, there's a lot of invasive species that also comes onto our rangeland or our farmland. Those are considered plant pest pressure. Others are wildlife hazards, excessive biomass accumulation. So we saw that we just had that recent fire, right? What was it called, up in the Sawmill area? Anyhow, that we have a lot of trees that are overcrowding, overgrowing, and then we had a lot of dry fuel underneath that really pushed that fire through. And so it got big really quick, and we had the high winds. So the biomass accumulation definitely is a hazard. Inadequate habitat for fish and wildlife. So what types of food cover are you having in place for us? For my family, an example, we have a lot of sagebrush in our area. So when we were going to do some sagebrush removal, we had to make sure we left more than 30% sagebrush for the deer, so that they could utilize it as their food and shelter still. So you still have to think about other species besides just what you're raising. Livestock production limitations. Do you have inadequate feeder forage, inadequate livestock shelter, inadequate livestock water availability? And I'm pretty sure we can check mark all of those also. You can put that in your plan as a resource concern. And then you have your air quality impacts. I am not too familiar with a lot of Navajo Nation's air quality issues. I do know an example. I was working with the mini farms community a few years ago, and you see a lot of if you drive through there, you see like between Chinle and mini farms, it's really, really bare ground. And you see the houses on the right or the left, and you start seeing sort of like sand dunes or sand accumulation alongside their homes. And come to find out, many of the folks in the mini farms area had respiratory problems, so asthma, all due to probably the dust that goes through there often. And so as a part of that, a mitigation could be, how do we, change that barren ground and try to hold some of that soil down so it's not so dusty going through that valley? Or are there windbreaks that could, potentially help, hold that sand in place rather than keep on moving it forward? Those type of things. But as for, quality or, what Navajo Nation indicates as air quality concerns, I'm not too familiar with this. But the other thing you could think about is going through Shiprock. When you're driving through there, sometimes you see all the pollution from the towns and from the what are they called, the mines, right? And you see that kind of hanging low. So those are air issues, air emission issues. And then you have efficient energy use. So how are you utilizing energy? So a lot of times NRCS will support like solar work, putting in a solar pump for the windmills, so that if it's not windy, then your solar pump's still pumping for you. So those were the NRCS not goals, but concerns that you can include into your conservation plan. I have, I think, 3 slides left. I don't know how much time I have, but basically when we talk about your conservation plan, I want you guys to really think about what is the purpose of me having a farmland or a rangeland? Why am I doing this? And what are my goals? You want to make sure you have goals tied to it so that you're also pushing yourself to reach those goals. For us, for my family, we, like I said, we raise cow-calf, and our goal is to have quality cattle and have 1 calf every year to 1 mom, so that we're able to, get something in return. And so every year is 100%, but we never usually get that 100%. We're always going to lose 1 or 2 here and there. Same way with your farmland. If you're a dryland farmer, your goal is probably, growing crops on your farmland every year. But if it didn't rain like it did this year, we got it much later. So your crop level is going to be lower than the years prior. Same way with, for another examples, even though we have irrigated farmlands, we're also trying to have other farmers revitalize farmland. So guess what happens now is we start fighting for irrigation water. I'm going to irrigate. No, they're going to irrigate. They're irrigating too long. So you start having that as an issue. And sometimes you're thinking like, gosh, it was nice to kind of be the only one of 3 farmers. Now we have like 9. So you think alongside that is, we're trying to ask people to farm again, and the result is now that we're fighting for water to irrigate our farmlands. So with that, what are your goals now that you did have water? Now we have more competition over that water. What am I going to grow? There's no way I'm going to grow alfalfa anymore because I can't get enough water on my alfalfa. I got to start thinking of plants that are less that don't need a lot of water, but still might have some nutritional value for our livestock. So my goals might end up changing, for different reasons. Next, your objectives is, they call it creating a SMART objective, making sure that it's specific, measurable, attainable, it's result oriented, and it's time bound. So on the side, I just put 2 examples. By 2021, 80% of my farmland will be producing a product. So, it really depends on you all. And I always tell new farmers, if they're going to be growing in they have acquired 10 acres, farming is hard. I have 15 acres, and it's definitely difficult to to grow on all 15 acres. And so to imagine what crop you're going to grow on that 15 acres. I had a meeting 3 weeks ago with a farmer in Shiprock, and he's growing corn on 100 acres. That's a lot of work, you know, from harvesting, planting to harvesting. But you as a producer, you got to think, you know, what am I capable of doing? Do I have the equipment? Do I have, you know, the help to be able to do this? So this farmer, shoot, how his 100 acres all planted, and I'm thinking, how is he going to get it done? And I'm wanting to learn from him. The other one is, you know, maybe we don't have a established record keeping yet, and that's something you want to practice. So I'm going to start. I will establish record keeping system by 2021. You know, right now I'm going to learn how to do it, what I need to keep records, what I need to keep track of, and I'm going to start. So by by January next year, I should be able to start being able to document everything that I'm doing. How much fuel or was my mileage going to go check on my livestock? Where am I going to go haul my water? How many times a day? That type of stuff. My last slide is performance measures. So based on your goals, your objectives, the things that you're implementing, your activities, how are you measuring that? And that's why it was important to have measurable goals, things that you can see. I know when I moved back, working with my dad, he wants to see progress right away, really quick. And so when we were doing an NRCS project on our farmland, it literally took 5 years to transition our rangeland to a better state. And that's 5 years is a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. So it has to be a commitment amongst your family to say that we're going to, do X, Y, and Z within this 5 years while this land is resting. And it has definitely transformed the forage in that area. We were seeing less than 30 pounds per acre, and we got to almost 100 pounds per acre. Those type of things. So it definitely changes. It changes your mindset, though, because now after we've gone through that process, you start thinking, how am I going to do this next area? You work at it in phases. And so that might be something that you implement into your goals, is that, like I said, it makes sure it's attainable, that you're able to work toward it. You have enough help to help you do that. Don't set goals that are way off. That's going to be your dreamy, wishy, your mission, or your, what do they call that? Your vision, something that you want to see, what you would want your land to be like, dreaming about it. Now, how are you going to get there in these small steps? So areas that I have, I always say maybe set 3 measurable goals. That's 3 is good enough, especially if you're working on a farmland or rangeland. Even if it's just, I'm going to put in 3 rock brush structures, that's still something, right? If I'm going to put in 10, maybe I put in 10 rather than what I thought was going to be only 3. That's definitely a success, right? You put in more than what you anticipated. The other things are example of record keeping. I started collecting my receipts. I put them in this particular binder. I'm documenting my planting dates, the types of seeds I planted, my livestock herd health records, breeding records. When did I buy that bull? When did that cow have its baby? When did I put the bull on the cow? When am I expecting a calf next year? Is it going to be in the cold winter? Is it going to be in the spring? Will there be enough forage on the ground at that time? So those are things that are going to help you become a better manager of your farmland or your ranch. Then your vegetation data measurements. I know this one's a tough one. It takes some skill to be able to be out on your rangeland and start learning how to identify the plants that are out there. But when you're out there, you start to see which plants are gone quicker because your animals are eating that one, and you start seeing the plants that are, that they don't choose to eat on the ground. You start kind of seeing that pattern, and then you start documenting how you're going to measure your vegetation. You can do it multiple ways, either just by documenting how much you're seeing or how much you're stepping on. And I always say the more you collect, the more accurate you're going to be on your data collection. If you're on a 5 mile by 5 mile rangeland and you're only going to do 5 plots, that's probably not good enough. You might want to do a little bit more than that, so that you're a little bit more true to your information that you're collecting. But those are just examples. So I know it's a lot to kind of go through, and usually when we do this workshop, it's a 2-day workshop, and we set some time out of the day, like 30 minutes. We just went over this, jot down all of your resource concerns. Now let's start establishing some plans to it. So in this case, through these webinars, we're hoping that you guys are able to join us again next Wednesday and kind of feed off of what you guys learned this week, and be able to start putting your thoughts into creating your conservation plan. With that, that's actually my last slide. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Jesse and possibly get some questions.
Okay, thank you. That was a good presentation. Like Benita was saying, we want to add on to this presentation next week, and to assist all of our participants to develop their conservation plan, because I know, it's very intimidating when you're told to complete a conservation plan, but how? And so with your guidelines, and then also with the templates that BIA and Navajo Nation distribute, will give us a better idea on which plan to how to write it. But like you were saying, Benita, it's all the same. It's all the same when you print them all out and you look at it. And really the main idea is to get you to think, to get all the producers to think, okay, well, why do I want a conservation plan? What do I really want to do with the land that I have? Because all of the decisions you make now affects the future. And that's one thing I know is hard for a lot of people, because even in my own family, we have that argument where it's like, well, a long time ago, it wasn't a problem, but that was a long time ago. We're here now, and we got to do something for the future. It's really just an investment in our future.